Hi, welcome to video number 19 on my YouTube series. As always, please check out my website at www.jscottguitar.com for information on my lesson programs, my Jam Camp series, my Partscaster building programs, original music, all kinds of things. All the musical stuff that I get up to, you'll be able to find information about it there if you're interested. And hopefully there will be some things that will entertain you there and keep you coming back for more. Okay, so in this video, I wanted to discuss a series of finger exercises that I call finger walking that I teach really everybody who comes to me for lessons, since most people are struggling to some degree with how they should, properly position their hands on the guitar. Of course, the first thing that you start with is realizing that there's no single way to set your fretting hand up on the neck of the guitar in order to play everything that you might want to play. If you're playing a lead lick with a lot of bends, you'll likely fall into a more diagonal position like this so that you have the leverage from this hinge on the neck, that kind of thing. But if you're playing a scale, the position I'm about to show you is a really useful thing. It accomplishes a number of really important things for you. First of all, of course, I'm sure you've noticed that your fingers are not all the same length. And the thing is that if you can learn to play with your fingers rounded over like this, then they become effectively the same length, particularly the little finger, which obviously suffers a lot from being much shorter than the other fingers. So in order to build this hand position and really have a good, balanced position that will make it possible for you to play easily with a lot of relaxation and hopefully then a lot more fluidity and musicality in your playing as a result of not having to fight with the guitar so much. What you'll do to build this position is, first of all, remove your thumb from the neck. Okay, you're not going to touch the neck with your thumb yet. Then what you're going to do is line up all four of your fingers. Now I'm demonstrating this on frets 7, 8, 9, and 10 because for most people that's a pretty easy stretch of 4 frets to reach without having to stretch very much between them. So my first finger is going to be assigned to fret 7. Any note on fret 7 is going to be played by my first finger. My second finger is going to live on fret 8, third finger fret 9, pinky finger fret 10. So what I'm going to do then is, again, thumbs off the back of the neck, I'm going to line up all my fingers along the strings, this string, in those frets, and then I'm going to make sure, as you can see on the screen, that my knuckles are pretty much lined up with the lower edge of the fretboard there. And also, and you can't see this so well, that my wrist is straight. Not much to see there, just don't drop it downward, but also don't break it upward like this, just keep it straight, because a straight wrist position is usually the most relaxed one to play from. Now, what you're going to do, once you have your fingers in position and your knuckles square to the neck, pretty close to square, and then your wrist straight, is then you'll place your thumb, and you'll find that this is going to show you sort of the natural position for your thumb. What a lot of people do to really mess themselves up, and of course they don't mean to, is they come to the guitar, the first thing that touches the neck is the thumb. If the thumb's out of position, and remember the role of the thumb is to support and balance your fretting hand, but if your thumb's out of position, everything else you're trying to do with your fretting hand is forced to adapt to that, to compromise itself, and you're really technically in big trouble right off the top. So what we're going to do, get the fingers in place, and then that's going to dictate the proper placement for the thumb. You can see in my case, this is sort of the flexibility of my hand, that it's in that space in between the first and second fingers, and that's a pretty, balanced place. The hand is always a little out of balance because of where the thumb is, but still, or where the thumb is in relation to the fingers. But what you're going to do here then is get that in place, and then once everything is set up, I'm going to practice lifting and landing my fingers on string 1, then I'm going to push my hand forward and come all the way across to string 6, and then draw my arm back and land on string 1 again. I'm going to go through that several times because I want to get my wrist relaxed, I want to get my shoulder relaxed, and I want to get my arm used to moving back and forth. What I'm doing is using, you've heard me say this before, larger muscles move to support the smaller ones, and by moving my fingers from string to string like this, they really get to treat every string almost like every other string. The fingertips are poised above the string, and then all I have to do is drop down onto the string in order to fret the notes that you want to play, okay? Rather than trying to lock your hand in one position and then reaching for everything. That's going to work great for some things that you want to play, but in this case, trying to play scales or melodies based on scales, patterns based on scales, this is definitely a great technique to develop and have available to you when you want to play music that can make use of this. Okay, now, I call these exercises finger walking because what you're going to be doing is moving from one finger to the next finger. In this case, I'm going to start by demonstrating all of these exercises with my index finger and my middle finger, again in frets 7 and 8. Okay, and so what's going to happen with that is I'm going to play a note on my first finger and then move to my second finger, and you'll notice that as soon as my second finger landed solidly on the fret, my first finger came up again. This is why I call these things finger walking, because like actual walking, you only have both feet in contact with the ground during each stride, just as your weight moves forward. But your both feet touch the ground only for an instant, and then you shift one foot forward. So what's happening here is rather than leaving my first finger in place and then just dropping my second finger in, see, to me, that teaches me to kind of trap my first finger, and as soon as I want to pick up and move to the next string over, it's a much bigger deal for me to let go of that and move. So if I can get used to playing a really smooth handoff, pun intended, from one finger to the next, trying to get a really smooth, connected legato sound. And then when I want to move to the next string, and the next string after that, I'm going to come back. Okay, like that. My hand can move very freely because I'm only ever really holding one finger down under full fretting pressure. Okay, so when you do these, we're going to work with 6 pairs of fingers. And the reason I do these things as pair exercises, 2 fingers at a time, I think a lot of guitar teachers really jump the gun with their students and they start trying to teach them all sorts of complicated 4-finger combinations or 3-finger combinations right off the bat. And really, when you think about almost anything that you're going to play when you're using the guitar this way, everything is going to be some kind of a pair movement, the finger that you're on and the finger that you want to move to. And by using these pair exercises, which are 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 2 and 4, and then 3 and 4, like that, then you'll be able to find which of the pairs already seem to be moving pretty easily for you and which ones are really causing you problems. And then guess what? You're going to spend most of your practice time working on the finger pairs that are causing you the most difficulty. Now, I'd like to point out that these exercises themselves are nothing that I came up with on my own. I was shown these things decades ago, really, and they're still a useful part of my practice routine. I'm sure that they're probably adapted from the violin literature, since fiddlers have a lot of exercises that we in guitar land have taken from them because it's important to be able to develop that ability to move all over the neck easily, all 4 fingers working, all the finger pairs, everything, and good position to help ourselves get our fingers in place easily and economically. Okay. This is how I'd recommend that you go about putting these exercises into practice. So a few points to keep in mind. First of all, we're not going to be worrying about keeping any kind of strict time yet. We'll do that. We're going to get the metronome involved in a little while. But the first thing is just to feel your way through these and get used to coordinating all the movements, because there really is a lot going on. This machine has a lot of moving parts. As you recall from the discussion I gave you about placing your fingers on the string and then lining up your knuckles, straightening your wrist, and then placing your thumb. Then you're pivoting on the thumb to move back and forth like this. You've got to get used to having things loose. I often have to bark at my students a little bit if they come in and they're resting, the left forearm, on their leg down here, because then you completely rob yourself of any range of motion. You've got no way to go, forward and backward or from side to side. I mean, you're really just kind of stuck with whatever you can reach from one position. It's a lousy way to play, so don't do it. So anyway, what's going to go on with this is we're going to work on this pivot exercise. This is a great warm-up, a good way to refresh your sense of how your hand is going to move when you're trying to play using this technique. Okay. Now what we're going to do is go back here to string 1. I'm going to start with my first and second fingers, which people would pretty much universally agree that those are the fingers that work the best. And what I'm going to do then is start doing this finger walking thing. Remember, what that means is I'm moving from the index finger to the second finger. There is an instant in which both fingers are in contact with the string, but then I'm moving back and forth between the two fingers. Okay, I'm going to start doing it on just one string, because what I'm trying to really work out and teach my ear is the sound of that smooth, connected legato performance. Okay, doesn't take too long to get that going. What I'm going to do then is move to 2 strings. Okay, you can see that I'm moving my hand back and forth with my arm just a little bit, just to make sure that my fingers can easily reach. I don't want to be extending the fingers trying to reach the strings, because they don't do such a great job with that. So what I'm going to do then is get settled in on 2 strings. Then I'm going to work on 3 strings. You can see that's a wider pivoting motion, and I'm going to add 1 string at a time until you can go all the way across to 6 strings and come back and have everything sounding really smooth and connected. Now, this is another place where I really differ from a lot of other guitar teachers. Most people, at least in what's reported to me by my students who have studied with other teachers, is that they're often recommended to do scales and exercises like this, technique building exercises, and immediately go rocketing back and forth, covering all 6 strings. And I think, again, for a lot of people, that's really awkward and difficult and confusing and kind of discouraging. So start off with something simple, rack up a lot of small successes, and that sets you up to, make the bigger, more difficult moves and just kind of take them in stride. So anyway, that's what we're going to work with. Now remember, again, I'm working in a set of 4 frets here, 7, 8, 9, and 10, selected because it's not difficult for most people's fingers to reach all 4 of these frets without having to do a whole lot of stretching. And then once I've got 1 and 2 pretty well in hand, then I'm going to go ahead and play with fingers 1 and 3. Again, starting on 1 string. Okay, and then increase to 2 strings, 3 strings, 4 strings, all the way to 6 strings and back. Fingers 1 and 4. Fingers 2 and 3. Fingers 2 and 4. Fingers 3 and 4. Now this is a good time for me to point out a couple things. First of all, don't sweat what you're doing with your picking hand. You could be playing with your fingers. You can do anything you want to. I'm just trying to get notes out of the guitar in the simplest possible way, not trying to work with any picking pattern in particular or anything, really just kind of defaulting to downstrokes, since that's the easiest thing to do, I think, without thinking. The other thing is that you'll notice that even though I'm working with 2 fingers at a time, I have trained my other fingers. So for instance, if I'm playing with finger 1 and finger 3, I still want fingers 2 and 4 just to kind of float over the string I'm playing or very nearby. Because after all, this is an exercise situation. It's not meant to be music. It's technique training, it's strength training, it's coordination, it's all those good things that you have to have some experience with in order to feel that you're in control of the guitar. But it's not meant to be music. I try to play it musically. I want a good tone, I want smooth connections, I want even volume, I want to feel I'm in control of the guitar. But you'll find that when you try a lot of these things, for instance, you'll put your first finger down and then your third finger down, and immediately your little finger will pop out like this. Other people will find that they're playing with fingers 2 and 3, and all of a sudden the first finger is out like this. That's all the result of normal tension in your hand, but we've got to find a way to train through that. So do a lot of stretching before you play. Take frequent stretching breaks while you're playing. Don't sit there and sweat trying to do these exercises for really long periods of time. 5-10 minutes at a stretch is about as much as I think you should go without taking a break and having fun playing something else for a while. But, certainly come back to it as much as you can. Okay, Okay, so the idea then, I'm going to work with all of those exercises. I'm powering everything with this pivot. My thumb on the back of the neck, okay, my arm moving back and forth to help carry my fingers into place so that when they are in position over the string, all they have to do is drop down onto the string. I can take advantage of this natural sort of evening out of my effective finger length. Okay, because I really do want to be able to reach all 6 strings in these 4 frets with all 4 of my fingers. I don't want to feel that any of my fingers is having to struggle too much to get to the notes that I want to play. So good stuff to work with. Now, once you've got those things in place, then you can take the same finger pairs, for instance, 1, 2, which is ascending, moving from a lower note to a higher note. We can turn it into a descending pair so that now you would be playing with fingers 2 and 1 like this. Come on back. 3 and 1. 4, 1. 3, 2. 4, 2. And 4, 3. Okay, like that. So that's going to give you a total of 12 different pairs of fingers, which you can play in any span of 4 frets on the neck that you want to. Okay, that's a lot of combinations right there. Again, make note of the ones that are really giving you trouble, the finger pairs that are causing you the most trouble, and spend most of your time really working on developing more smoothness and clarity and relaxation with those. Now, once you get to the point where you've kind of worked in this business of moving around like this, go to the metronome. Yeah, I know, everybody hates the metronome. But I've got the metronome set here to click at 80 beats a minute. And one of the best ways to work with this, now you're going to set the tempo wherever you feel it's comfortable. I just wanted to set it at 80 because, well, actually it was already set at 80. So I'm going to play 1 note per beat, per click, and I'm going to try and play as evenly and as much in sync with the metronome as possible. So if I do my 1-2 exercise, going all the way back and forth across 6 strings, here's what I hope you'll hear. So. Okay. Now the musical qualities that I do want to hear when I'm practicing this, I want to hear a lot of evenness, a lot of consistency from note to note and string to string. I want to hear that my finger walking motion is working and everything is connecting really smoothly. My opinion is that it's more difficult to learn to play with that kind of smoothness, but if you can do that, you can break it up and play more staccato with a more disconnected sound. For instance, if I do the same drill played staccato, you would hear and so on like that. That's a great sound too. All of these sounds are useful, but if people are used to playing staccato, it's, I think, harder for them to smooth it out and play legato. If you're used to legato, I think you can adapt to staccato more easily. Anyway, that's the way that all that has worked for me. So now, over time, you'll be able to take these same principles and adapt them to scale fingerings that you're working with. You'll already have a great head start on how to smoothly connect the notes, sort of getting a desirable, default tone or approach to playing, getting the phrasing working so that everything is running smoothly. But again, the thing that's really useful about these exercises is by highlighting the movement of each pair of fingers individually, you can find, and hey, what a surprise, for most people, the one that really gives them fits is working with fingers 3 and 4. And if you just take some time to work with that, you'll find that begins to smooth out and loosen up and become a more useful way for you to play. Okay, so I'll have more to say about this in another video, but in the meantime, this is plenty to keep you busy, really, for quite a long time. It's a great way to warm your hands up. It's a great way to recover some of your technique and your muscle tone if you've taken a little time off from playing. And anything where you're trying to play a melody and you're just not happy with how smoothly things are going, chances are it's because your technique has too much tension built into it. You're out of position possibly. Your hand is already kind of tight. You're having to fight with it to move. Tension is just a killer in anything that you're trying to do to operate the instrument smoothly so that you really can play easily. If you're playing easily, it's going to feel and sound, I think, to people like it's easy for you to do. That's a pretty enjoyable experience for them, and you're going to feel good about your playing too. So anyway, lots of, I hope, useful things to think about here. See you at the next video. Please check out the other videos on my channel. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I'm getting some nice comments from people who are contacting me about what I'm doing with this series of videos, and I hope that you too will find something fun and interesting here. All right, see you next time.